This is January 22nd, 2019, Edward Nan, sonsofgod.com. This will be a meditation of sorts concerning resurrection life. The reality that we face is that there is no further next step in the evolving of the sons of God, but that we see the mortal put on immortality. And that's been something that's been at the forefront now for well over 40 years. Resurrection life is not necessarily something new. It's just that it's come to the time where we are to see the manifesting of resurrection life. And this will become even more manifest on a much broader scale as the first breakthroughs manifest. The whole Christian world has been locked into an idea that the resurrection and the life was an event set for a certain time to take place, instead of realizing that resurrection life, like anything else of redemption, is obtainable. Now, that takes it out of the scope of looking for a certain window or season, but realizing that it's obtainable at any point, which is, I think, perhaps gives a little bit of understanding concerning Paul in Philippians 3, where he said, "If by any means I might attain to the resurrection from the dead." Paul wanted to bypass the process of dying. Paul wasn't limited to the idea that, well, a resurrection life is set for a time 1,000 years in the future, or 2,000 years, or whatever that element is. But it was very real to Paul that possessing resurrection life was something that was obtainable. There's a question that we can have down through history of how many really did attain resurrection life. And we know that if they attained it, they wouldn't be talking about it. But it's astonishing that many of the early records, which seem to be like a myth, talk about a resurrection instantaneous with martyrdom that happened. And some of the stories tell how someone would be dying and then suddenly resurrected, and they would disappear or be caught up to the heavens. We're beginning to realize that though we seem to be locked into the world of the senses, the visible world, which is why circumstances, the appearance of things, what we hear, can have such an effect on us, which is something we've been dealing with now for quite some time. And yet, everything in the Scriptures keeps speaking about the fact that we have entered into a spirit world. Right now we're walking to some extent, or to a great extent, by faith, because the eyes do not behold the reality of what really is unfolding. And the problem is, we're living with our spirit in a realm of reality that's unfolding, even though our eyes are not really seeing it on this plane. Yet it doesn't negate the fact that we have been brought into a world of spirit that really is governing and dictating what is unfolding, and we're still in this travail to come out of that level of unawareness. We have to understand, I think we are, that all the limitations that we have are just bound up in the physical world of the senses. And the minute you pass into the realm of spirit, everything changes. And that's what we've seen for a very long time. That getting out of the realm of the senses and you get into the realm of spirit, and we've seen this, is that all the limitations drop off that you've had. Some can think, well, it's hard to fathom what the transition's going to be like because we're still seeing it and perceiving it from the limitations of our carnal mind and the fears of the carnal mind and all of the hang-ups of the carnal mind. And yet, when we pass into the Spirit and make this transition, all of that drops off like a dirty piece of clothing. And as the Lord has said before, we will barely be able to remember the life of limitation that we have lived for the freedom that we will have been brought into. Which brings us to that point. Where are we? This is where we are. This is what we're contending for. The Lord said, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, meaning that we enter into a spiritual oneness with him, where he's living in us, his words are living in us, we can ask what we will, so on and so forth. It becomes a spiritual oneness with Christ that ends the limitations that we know as existing as individuals. What we're heading into, and we have talked about it in the Word before, we're already here. So it's difficult to address this to an extent because we're already here. We just haven't caught up with ourselves. We just haven't seen it in the correct light. But the Lord was prophesying about ending or breaking through the barrier of existing as a separate individual and becoming something pleasing to God. How do you please the Father? How do you please the Lord? Simple. Become one with him. The interpenetration of God and man, the indwelling of the Godhead, the fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles. That is our address. That is where we've been. That is our truth and reality. It's here. We're not looking for another day. It's here. But we're leaning into the experience of it, the knowing of it. But with that knowing comes a tremendous change within us. So it's very interesting where we are and what does the reality of resurrection life really going to mean to us. People think of heaven as being light years away in the Orion, and yet it's not. It's just another realm away. It's just another frequency. We know in the 5th chapter of 1 Thessalonians that the Lord speaks about the conditions and the worlds that will exist at the time of the coming of the Lord. Many will walk in the night, and some will walk in the light. But those who are embracing the parousia will walk in more and more light and revelation. And we are here at the time of the parousia. In 1 Corinthians 15, it talks about how Christ will rule until his enemies are made the footstool of his feet, and the last enemy is death. So, what is the Lord saying? The last enemy to be destroyed is death. But it doesn't mean that death must be overcome for the sons to begin to break into resurrection life. There is a judgment coming upon death and upon all of the hosts of darkness, of which the sons of God will be the great facilitators of God's authority and plan in the earth. But what we're going to see after the first wave breaks through is that there could be literally millions of people on the face of the earth who begin to break into resurrection life, while the rest of the world remains under death. And Christ will reign until death itself is destroyed. The problem is that, and one that the sons themselves have been coming out of, is that within the hearts of men and the bodies of men, in a whole realm of futility and decay, death still seems to exist because we've held on to its reality. But the sons are letting that go, and they're coming up higher, and they're laying that aside because death no longer has dominion over the sons. The issue of becoming visible or invisible becomes very important, more than a theory, because it's the reality of resurrection life. You remember after the resurrection of Christ, how he would appear suddenly. He was not limited to the physical. We must face the fact of what resurrection life is going to be. It will be an existence in a world that is invisible, but not vulnerable to it. To be visible or invisible. But when you're visible, you're no longer vulnerable. This is what awaits the sons. This is what we're pressing forward to obtain. As Paul calls it, the out-resurrection from the dead. We're not looking to lay aside this body of death and then, go and grab a hold of a new spirit body and move into resurrection life, and then someone comes along and buries the old body. No, we're looking at a transformation or metamorphosis. The same thing that happened to the Lord when the Father overshadowed him and he was glorified. He was basically metamorphosized. Christ was changed. And that's what we're looking to see happen now. A change where the mortal puts on immortality. Exactly how is it going to happen? I don't know, but I know the prophecy has come to us that we will undergo extensive physical change. And we talked about the worm in, I think, the second audio on chapter 47 of A Workshop for Seers, making a very good comparison that our present sojourn has been very similar to that of a worm being in a cocoon, going through changes until the time of his manifestation into a whole new order. And we too have been in a cocoon. Changes are going on within us, even right now. It's been accelerating to a great degree. But you can't necessarily quantify it. It's not on this frequency yet. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. What's happening to you in the transformation of your energy, your essence. The last point of its manifestation is the physical. So track with me on this. When the word comes, and we've talked about this before, it creates a reality in the realm of spirit. Then it begins to gradually filter down until that reality manifests on the physical plane. So you could speak judgment over principalities and powers as the Lord leads, and you might not see anything change on the physical. And you say, well, gosh, nothing's changed. Yet, unless you have eyes to see, because if you could see in the Spirit, you would see, oh, judgment has just been delivered and carried out. The spirit world is being turned upside down. And yet on the physical plane, you look and you say, well, nothing's changed. It doesn't work. I don't understand. And yet it just takes that little bit of time for it to manifest on the physical plane. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a situation where resurrection life has already been delivered to the sons. That's why the dreams, the visions, the words God speak can be so difficult and perplexing, because the Lord says, okay, you've got it, and you bear witness, I have it, and you know you have it, and yet it doesn't seem like anything has changed, and yet you have it, and the Lord says, no, you have it. And so we go in travail, like we've said before, to bring into manifestation the reality of a spiritual truth. So this is somewhat similar. God begins to say, okay, resurrection life is coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's here. All of a sudden you wake up one morning and the word comes to you, you've got resurrection life. And you look around and nothing seems to change. You go in the restroom, the bathroom, you look in the mirror, nothing seems to change. And you don't understand. Okay, well, Lord, I believe, but I don't see. And so sometimes days, weeks, months, years can pass concerning a word that God would speak. And then all of a sudden, it begins to manifest. It's very hard to quantify how long it takes for a word to come out of the realm of spirit, down, 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 until it finally manifests in the physical form. That's why, the battle that we war is challenging, because we take dominion over situations, and those things are nailed. And yet it takes a period of time before it filters down and you see it on the physical plane. When God says, okay, everything's going to break loose, we're going to see, earthquakes, we're going to see a lot of things happen. Well, the moment he spoke it, it's been done, it's been put into motion. In the spirit, things have been turned upside down. And so you're looking, saying, okay, well, I'm looking, every day I'm watching, but I don't see it. A year passes. Well, I guess that wasn't a word. But no, it's still in the process of filtering down, which we don't quite understand. The only thing I could say would be Daniel, when he was out by the brook praying, and it took 21 days for Gabriel to break through. But the word was, the minute you spoke, the minute you prayed, it was heard, it was done. The Father did it, it was done. And so Gabriel went to convey that message, to say, Daniel, it's done. You can relax now. You don't have to keep interceding. It's done. He was said, Gabriel's told, go deliver the message. Let him know it's done. Well, it took 21 days. And I'm sure that Daniel arose and probably had a real witness. Okay, I feel like something was done here. Yet he didn't see a thing. Nothing changed. He didn't really get the confirmation for 21 days. That's a type and a shadow of how things seem to work. So God comes and says, okay, you had resurrection life. Okay, it's just beneath your skin. Whatever. Well, I think we don't have to believe for it. I don't think we have to go and travail over it. I think we just need to realize that we have resurrection life. If the Lord has spoken that to you, if He has borne witness to you, then it's done. If He hasn't, then I can, that's fine. But when that word comes, it is done. And I know for us, it's a matter of how long it's going to take for it to manifest as a reality on this physical plane. Because it's here. The Lord's been talking about it for years. And over the last 2-3 years, much more specifically. And over the last 6 months, even more specifically. At some point, it was finished. And I don't know at what point that was. 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, I don't know. But it was done. So what are we looking for? We're looking for the manifestation of the truth and the reality of what God has done. Resurrection life is here. We're waiting to manifest it. But while we're looking and waiting before the Lord, things are happening big time within you, within me. Because it just doesn't filter down by gravity. The word in the Spirit, the reality of the Spirit filters down by virtue of the exercise of dominion and authority, of the work of the cross, a lot of dynamics that we don't necessarily all understand. So it's in the process of working through the various levels or barriers or whatever within us. So if things feel a little topsy-turvy constantly, it's because there's an outworking of a spiritual reality that you are walking around with, but hasn't yet been able to manifest on the physical. But it doesn't mean you don't have it. You have it. I have it. But it's in the process of being brought into a point where it will have its physical manifestation. What governs how quickly that will be, I don't know. It seems to be something of a process, but it seems to be accelerating right now. Look for the physical to manifest the reality of what has already been done in the Spirit to you. Others in the cloud of witnesses I've seen, they have resurrection life. But I don't think until the breakthrough comes for them that it will manifest